Hey everybody, welcome back to Vibe Code Camp. I'm Paul, and in this video we're going to go over creating agentic tools with Composio. And I have a bunch of diagrams down here that I will show you, but first things first, let me give you a high-level overview. Whenever we interact with AIs, the AIs are trained to predict what is the next word, and they don't have a connection to the outside world outside of what is trained into their brain. So the classic example is something like the cat sat on the, and obviously the next word is more likely to be couch than the cat sat on the cactus or something like that. So the AIs just know how to predict the next word. They don't have connections to the internet. They don't have connections to valuable tools like our calendars or to tools like Google Maps. We have to build those connections and give those tools to the AI. So for the purposes of our application, we have to define the artificial intelligence and all of the smarts that it has inside of its brain that it received during training. But then we have to hand that artificial intelligence various tools so that whenever we say to it, add an appointment to my calendar for 3 p.m. on Friday, it knows, okay, I need to use the Google Calendar tool. I need to make sure that there isn't anything on the calendar for 3 p.m. on Friday already. Okay, there's not. Now I need to add it, and that's a different tool. That is, the addition of the event is a different tool. Same thing goes for scheduling events and scheduling enough drive time between them. If you have an event at 2 p.m. and you want to schedule another event for 3 p.m., the AI has to use the Google Maps tool to understand when does the event at 2 p.m. end, and is there enough time given traffic and all the other information that Google Maps offers to actually start the next appointment at 3 p.m. Without giving the AI access to those tools, the simple ability to predict what word comes next isn't useful. Like the AI would just say, sure, let me do that for you, and then wouldn't actually do anything because it doesn't have access to the tools. So in this video, I'm going to go over how I was able to accomplish defining and setting up various tools and then giving them to a test AI to have the AI actually take a prompt, like put an appointment on my calendar for 3 p.m. on Friday, and actually have that appear on my Google Calendar. So let me show you the conclusion here for this video before we jump in to all the details. So I have this command down here, and we can see it says python manage.py test Composio, and then we give it a user ID, and we give it the test LLM flag, and then we give this prompt, put a meeting on my calendar for 3 p.m. on Friday. Now, let me go back and show you my calendar. So this is just my test calendar for the sake of this Vibe Code Camp, but we can see 5 p.m. on Friday. 3 p.m. on Friday, there is nothing, but there is a meeting at 5 p.m. on Friday. So with this prompt, put a meeting on my calendar at 3 p.m. on Friday, I will execute this script and we'll watch it happen. Hopefully in real time, we'll see an appointment show up right there. Perfect. Yep, it just appeared. So we can see that we received a 200 OK message back, and we can see all the details of this run that is encapsulated inside of this command, test Composio. So we sent a message to an AI, and in that message, we said, put a meeting on my calendar at 3 p.m. on Friday, and the AI, because we have defined tools, the AI knows, hey, I have access to this tool. It allows me to view a user's calendar and put an appointment on the calendar. It knows I have access to that. Therefore, whenever the user asks to put something on their calendar, I know to use that tool. So I'm going to show you the relatively complex process of setting that up. But before we get into that, I want to explain why this is such a big deal and what I'm about to show you, why it's so important. So the ability to extend the usefulness of an AI outside of just simple prediction of the next word really gives us the ability to apply the intelligence, the brain that is inside the AI to all of the different apps that we interact with as humans on the computer every single day. We could build a tool that interacts with the DoorDash API, and we could say, order me Chinese food for my family tonight for less than $100 or something like that. And it would go through the process of using the DoorDash tool to order that Chinese food for us. And that ability to extend the capabilities of the AI by giving it tools is extremely powerful, because we then as humans become orchestrators, if you will, and the AIs are actually the ones doing the work because they have intelligence, perceived intelligence anyway, that can go out and actually execute the things on our behalf by using the tools that we define for them. So what I'm going to show you in this video is how we define the AI and give the AI these tools, but the tools that I'm going to show are just Google Calendar and Google Maps, whereas because we're using Composio is a system that has a whole bunch of tools inside of it. You can think of it like a bucket just full of different kinds of hammers and saws and I don't know, whatever other kind of tool you can think of. And they're defined, those tools are defined in such a way that they're easily handed off to AIs. So the power here is I'm going to show you how to set up an AI that can do so many things because it has access to so many tools, or it could have access to so many tools. But again, we're going to confine, for the sake of this video and this project, the tools that the AI has access to Google Calendar and Google Maps. So let me give you this quick diagram that shows you how that is done. So the desired outcome here for our project is the user sends a message, the AI knows how to access the calendar and maps. AI has access to the data inside of the Google Calendar and the Google Maps. The AI makes updates and then the AI responds. So the user sends their message, you can see that here with this teal line, into the app. The app sends the user's message to the AI, and then the AI says, okay, based on this user's message, I need to request data and updates to the Google Calendar, and I need to request data from Google Maps. And then the calendar sends back information and the maps sends back information. That information is given to the AI. The AI then decides how to respond to the user and what to do. The AI then sends its response to the app, and then the user sees the AI's response. That is our desired outcome. But in order for that to work, things get a little bit complicated, and that's the purpose of this video. So the way that we have to set this up is the developer sets up a connection between Google Cloud Platform and Composio. So remember, Composio is the bucket that stores all of the tools that are defined in such a way that AIs know how to use them. So you can think of like this pen as a tool that a human knows how to hold and use. But the AI doesn't know how to use the tool that a human knows how to use. That has to be defined differently. So what we need to do is take tools like the Google Maps and Google Calendar APIs and transform them so that the AIs can use them. And that's what Composio does. So in order for the AI, again, up here in our desired scenario, to have access to the user's Google Calendar, specifically the user's Google Calendar, we need to set up what's called authorization that says, hey, I'm the user, I'm using the AI scheduler app, and I am going to give this application access to my Google Calendar. I'm going to give this AI access to my Google Calendar. And we're going to do that through Composio. So what we do first is we set up authorization. We add Google Calendar and Google Maps to our Google Cloud platform. We set up the authorization inside of our project, inside of the Google Cloud or GCP platform. And then we set up something very similar called auth scopes inside of Composio. And this is a double-sided arrow because there is a connection made by giving secret keys that are generated inside of the Google Cloud platform. We give those secret keys to Composio and we tell Google Cloud platform, hey, Composio is going to talk to you whenever a user says, I'll give you access to my Google Calendar. So the AI actually talks to Composio and Composio talks to Google Cloud platform that then gives access to the Google Calendar and the Google Maps APIs. So when the user authorizes access to their calendar, maybe you're familiar with screens that look like this. You know, whenever you sign up for a service and it says sign in with Google, what you actually are doing there is you're saying to this application, hey, I'm going to sign in with Google and the various services that this application needs from my Google account, like my Gmail or my Google Calendar or any other Google service that you can think of, I am authorizing this application to have access to those things that I have inside of my Google account. I hope that that makes sense. And all of that is set up through Composio. So Composio is the one that is maintaining that connection, maintaining that authorization. What we do inside Google Cloud Platform is we say our application is going to need access from our users to their Google Calendar, and we are generally going to need access to Google Maps. And then Composio is the one that maintains that connection and defines that tool for the AI to use to interact with the Google Calendar that the user has said, I will give the AI scheduler app access to my Google Calendar. Okay, so this is what happens in reality whenever the AI doesn't have access to the tools that it needs access to. So the user sends their message to the app then sends the message to the AI, and then the AI attempts to access the user's Google Calendar and attempts to access the Google Maps API. But because we don't have the authorization that is set up through Google Cloud Platform and Composio, the AI doesn't have access to the user's sensitive information. So what we need to do is the user sends their message. Let me move this down here real quick. The user sends their message to the AI, and then the AI, following these orange lines first, the AI makes a data request or a data update. A data update would be like adding the event to the calendar. It makes this request to Composio, which the user has said, I authorize this app through Composio to have access to my Google Calendar. And I authorize this app to access Google Maps through Composio. So then Composio has these little green locks here. They're unlocked. Composio is granted access because it maintains the authorization to the user's Google Calendar and to Google Maps. And then instead of these dotted lines that aren't complete, the Google Calendar data and updates are sent back to Composio. The Google Map data is sent back to Composio. And then all of that is sent back to the AI. And then the AI responds to the user, and then the AI's response is sent back to the user. So I know this is a little bit hard to grasp, but we could set this up without Composio. We could have the diagram look like this, where we define, hey, when the AI needs to make changes to the user's Google Calendar, it calls this function that is all these lines of code. And when the AI needs access to the Google Maps API to figure out the travel time between two different points, we could write all of that code. And we could set up all the different authorizations, but maintaining that connection is a pain. It's difficult to do. It's much more difficult than it is to set it up through Composio. So Composio helps us. I'll delete these locks just for the sake of this part of the conversation. Composio helps us maintain that connection and maintain that authorization that says the user is allowing your AI to access their Google Calendar. So I hope all of that makes sense. Composio, again, is maintaining the tool that the AI has that allows the AI to access the user's sensitive information because the user gives access to their Google Calendar and their sensitive information to Composio. So Composio goes, here's a Google Calendar tool that the user has said you're allowed to use, rather than us having to define that tool. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If not, ask me any questions, but let's jump into Google Cloud Platform to show you how I set this up, and Composio to show you how I set that up. So over here inside of the Google Cloud Platform, I'm at console.cloud.google.com. I signed up with my email address and I created a new project called AI Scheduler. And then I came over here and I went to APIs and services. And specifically, I went to library. So what we're doing in this step is we are setting up our project inside of Google and we're saying, we are creating this app. It's called AI Scheduler, and we're going to need to get information from our users from their Google Calendar. So we need to set up this authorization inside of the Google Cloud Platform so that the users agree to give us access to their Google Calendar. So let me just show you that it's all set up correctly. I went in here and I searched for Google Calendar, and we go to Google Calendar API, click on Google Calendar API. And then before this was enabled, which we can see it's enabled here, there was an enable button that enables Google Calendar and the Google Calendar API inside of our application. And then I did the same thing for Google Maps, and I'll just search generally for Google Maps so I can show you how many different things there are. I added multiple different services. You can see how many there are here specifically for Google Maps. I added multiple different services like the geocoding API to this project. And that is essentially saying, hey, Google, I need access inside of this AI Scheduler app to all of these different functionalities that are offered inside the geocoding API. And I don't exactly understand 100% of the rationale behind why Google does it this way. It's probably just because such gigantic organizations use Google and their Google Cloud Platform, but they require that you enable these different functionalities. You can't just say, I want access to everything. You have to go in and enable individual useful tools inside of your project that the AI and Composio will ultimately interact with and that the code will ultimately interact with. So I enabled multiple different Google Maps services. And then the next thing that I did is I came over here and I went to auth consent screen. So this auth consent screen is that screen that you're probably very used to seeing. Let me go back to the diagram here. This screen that says, do you want to sign in with Google and do you want to give access to your Google Calendar account? So we have to set that up inside of our Google Cloud Platform account. And we have to say inside of the auth consent screen what scopes we need this auth consent screen to have access to. And specifically for the Google Calendar, we need the user to say, when they go through that screen, I'm giving this AI Scheduler app and Composio access to this scope called auth/calendar. And you can see it will say to the user, see, edit, share, and permanently delete all calendars you can access using Google Calendar. And then we also have to give access. We have to set up the scope here to give access to auth/calendar.events. And that means that the user is giving access to the application and to Composio so that we can create the tools for the AI to view and edit events on all your calendars. So again, we're saying, hey, Google, we need to use the Google Calendar API. And specifically, whenever a user signs up for our app and they go through the authorization and consent, we need them to consent to giving us access to share, edit, and permanently delete all calendars they have access to using Google Calendar. And we also need them to consent to viewing and editing events on all of their calendars. So we set all of that up. And then if we come in here to clients, I'm not going to open this because there is sensitive information that would allow people to have access to the app that we don't want them to have access to. But we set up this client that is Composio calendar integration. And now this is where all of the content that connects Google Cloud Platform and the APIs inside of it to Composio. So let me open up Composio, and over here inside of Composio, we're at platform.composio.dev. I created a new project inside of Composio, and I called it AI Scheduler VCC. And then I came up here to auth configs. And you can see that I then clicked this button, create auth config for the Google Maps and the Google Calendar APIs. So I clicked create auth config, came down here to Google Calendar, and then I kept it as OAuth 2. And you can see here that the scopes that this Google Calendar tool inside of Composio needs access to are those same scopes that I showed you over here inside of Google Cloud Platform, auth/calendar and auth/calendar.events. So I kept those exactly as they were. And then I came down here, this is the ticket, and I checked this little toggle switch on. And then inside client ID and client secret, I added the client ID and client secret, which are given to us whenever we create a client here inside of this. And then inside of the client creation, there's a place to put a redirect URI. And I just copied this and put it into the client setup over here. Now, doing that connects the Google Cloud Platform that says our application needs access to our users' Google Calendars to Composio. And the tools that are defined by Composio are now usable. So real quick, what I did for the Google Maps API is I just went up here and did Maps, Google Maps, and then I selected API key. And then all I did was come in here and then I clicked connect account. And then I put in a fake user ID for now and then clicked down here and added an API key. Where did I get that API key? If we go back over to Google Cloud Platform, scroll down to Google Maps, inside of the Google Cloud Platform, inside Google Maps platform, inside of Overview, I click on Keys and Credentials. And then in here, we can see that I have the Google Maps Platform API key. And that says, here is the special key that gives your Google Cloud account access to use the Google Maps API. Now, that is different from the Google Calendar authorization because we aren't using the user's Google Maps account. We're using the company's Google Maps account. So each time the AI says, I need to figure out how far appointment 2 is from appointment 3, or I need to figure out how to arrange all the appointments on the user's calendar correctly using Google Maps, the AI isn't using the user's Google Maps, they're using my Google Maps. And that will cost me fractions of a penny per call or per tool usage on the Google Maps API. Whereas again, whenever we set up this Google Calendar authorization, what we're doing is we aren't saying we need access to Google Calendar broadly. We're saying we need access to the user's specific Google Calendar, and we need to have the user authorize that access. So let me go back over to Composio and show you what this looks like when it's all set up. So I actually don't need this one that was just set up on accident. Okay, so with these two authorization configurations set up, I went into Claude Code, and admittedly, this process took me about, I don't know, maybe maybe 8 to 10 hours to really figure out, but that's why you're here, is I'll help you cut through all the noise. What I did was I opened up a new chat with Claude Code and I gave it access to the project overview document here. And I gave it access to the plan that we created, that is the OpenAI agents Composio integration plan. And I said, go do a bunch of research into how we're going to make this work, and look specifically at these plans and look specifically at the project overview. And then I went to Composio and I went to the OpenAI Agents SDK documentation, and I copied the links to those documentation sites and said, use the research specialist sub-agent to go out and research how we are actually going to do this. And over 8 to 10 hours, it set up all the code. There was a lot of debugging that I had to do. There were a lot of issues that I had to work through, but it wrote all of this code up here inside of services, specifically inside of this Composio service, and inside of all of these files here, auth, calendar, client.py, executor.py, so on and so forth. It wrote all of that code in accordance with the steps in this plan. So I went step by step through phase 1.1, 1.1.1, 1.1.2, 1.1.3, so on and so forth. And I had it go through each of those using the Composio documentation, using the Google Calendar API documentation, and then making updates each time it successfully completed one of these steps. And ultimately what we arrived at is this command that I showed you at the beginning of this video, that is python manage.py test Composio. So what that is doing is it's running the code inside of this file here, which is just 253 lines long. And just from telling the Claude Code AI over here, this is the plan, this is what I want you to create, go step by step by step by step, working through each of those things from the plan iteratively. With just a couple prompts, it wrote all of this code that then gives me this management command that I can run, that sends a message to an AI. The AI knows I have access to this tool that gives me access to the user's Google Calendar, which they have authorized me to access, and I can make updates to their calendar. So I know that I'm kind of glazing over a lot of stuff here, but the main thing that you need to know as you build these apps for yourself is to define that plan, which I went over here. Define that plan. Have Claude Code write that plan, breaking down what you're trying to do, including links to documentation. And then have it tell you what you need to do. All of the stuff that I went over inside of the Composio dashboard and the Google Maps and Google Calendar authorization and API setup, Claude told me how to do all of that. And it was all inside of the planning document. And as long as the plan is very clear on what needs to be done, this plan literally says, get me to the point where I can have this management command that I can run that will allow me to add a calendar event to my Google Calendar for a user that is authorized via Composio. As long as it says that and you go step by step, it will work. You have to spend a little bit of time doing it and telling it to fix any bugs that come up and clearing the context, and then having it do the research, and then having it plan, how am I going to accomplish phase 1.3, Google Maps API key setup. As long as you follow the context engineering principles and you do it iteratively, small step by small step based on this plan, it will work. So I hope that all of that makes sense. Because I don't understand any of the code that is written inside of any of these files here that the AI wrote for us. And because I don't understand how they all work together, I'm not going to go through the code. The main point that I want to make here is what I've just said. make the plan, make sure the plan is composed of very little steps, incremental steps, and then have the AI go through each of those tiny little incremental steps, clearing the context after each step is accomplished. One other thing that I want to mention is that as the AI made progress, I had it write documentation. So I have this folder over here called documentation. And you can see inside the documentation folder, I have this other folder called overviews and summaries. And I have this phase 1 through 4 implementation summary, Composio direct SDK integration. And this is just a bunch of documentation that I had the AI write as it worked on the code for me. And then halfway through the process, the AI realized there was a bug and we had to refactor, that is, rewrite all of the code. So there was a single file that was called Composio service.py that contained all of the code that was inside auth.py, calendar.py, client.py, executor. You get the point. That single file contained all of that code and it was causing us issues. So it said, hey, Paul, I need to rewrite all of this code that's in this gigantic monolithic file into, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 individual files. And I said, okay, let's do it. But whenever you're finished, I need you to document the entire process. So now, whenever I start a new conversation with Claude, because I want to move on to the next phase in the plan, which is, I believe, phase 4 and phase 5, all I have to do is say, hey, go look at the documentation directory, use the research agent to review all of the documents inside the research or inside the documentation directory to understand all of those and come back to you with the valuable information and then tell me what the next phase is that we need to work on. Because I have all of this documentation here saved, it's like saving a checkpoint of the AI's brain that says, this is what we've worked on, this is how we got it to work, just so you know going forward. So just to repeat again, the most important principles here, I followed the principles of context engineering. I created a plan based on research, and then I went through each phase of the plan one at a time, clearing the conversation each time I completed a phase. I had the AI update the phase as we went through it with these check marks and these implementation notes. Also, as we completed phases, I had it write documentation that says what didn't work and what did work. And through that iterative process, everything works. Now, I said that this process took me 8 to 10, maybe 12 hours. What took me so long wasn't the actual writing of this code and getting that script to work that I ran at the beginning of this video. That process took me maybe an hour, maybe even 35 minutes, if I'm being honest. What took long was gaining an understanding of the Google Cloud platform and setting up everything in the right order. And the only reason why that took so long is because I thought that I was smart enough to do it myself. What I should have done and what I ultimately did is I opened up a separate instance of Claude Code and I had a conversation with it. I passed it the project overview and said, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I'm stuck. Do a bunch of internet research to help me figure out how I'm going to accomplish getting to the point where I can send a message to the AI that has access to tools authorized via Composio and have an appointment added to my calendar. And then it walked me through step by step, like I was a child, exactly how to do everything, where to click, what I needed to add to Composio, what I needed to get from Google Cloud Platform, all of that stuff. So I hope that all of this makes sense. Again, we've made a lot of progress. We're at the point where I can send this message, this prompt, put a meeting on my calendar at 3 p.m. on Friday. And like I showed at the beginning of this video, it just appears on my calendar. So super exciting progress. I know this is a high level overview of the actual work that was done, but that's really what we're doing as vibe coders. We are giving high level instructions, high level direction to these AIs, and the AIs go and do the nitty gritty detailed work for us. They go and they write this calendar.py script. I don't know what's inside calendar.py script. I don't understand what this list calendars is. I don't understand what the executor.py does, but I do know what I want, which is defined inside of this planning document. And I do know that the steps inside this plan make sense. And all I have to do is be smart enough to orchestrate the AIs to do the things step by step in this planning document. So I hope that makes sense. I really hope that you understand the value of context engineering now that you can see this all come together. And most of all, I really, really hope that you understand the value of giving these AIs tools. If I just had an instance of Claude Code down here and I said, go make an appointment on my calendar at 3 p.m. on Friday, Claude Code would never be able to do that because it doesn't have access to my calendar. But through Composio and Google Cloud Platform, we've now given the AI access to my calendar. Okay, to wrap things up, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the OpenAI Agents SDK so that we can have, instead of just one AI that has this very narrow capability of interacting with our calendar, we're going to have a bunch of different AIs all talk to each other to make updates to my calendar using the Google Calendar interaction with Composio and using the Google Maps integration with Composio so that they can go out, gather all the information, make decisions, make updates to the calendar based on all that information. It's going to be super exciting, but we're going to follow the exact same principles that we followed and that I've gone over in this video. I know that was a lot. I know I've been talking pretty fast and rambling here. If you have any questions, please send me a direct message or leave a comment on the video, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. Go check out Composio. It is a fantastic service with really great customer support. It's amazing to be able to empower these artificial intelligence minds with tools to interact with the real world that is the internet that we're all so used to interacting with. But for now, that's what I have for you. Let me know if you have questions, and thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next video.